Hey everybody, movie retrospective time, and we're going full Kubrick on this episode, talking about a fucking classic, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Masterpiece.
It really is. I don't know if it's my favorite Kubrick film, but I'm really glad that we got to revisit it, because I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and I forgot how fucking funny it was. Oh my god.
It's funny, but it's true.
Well, yeah, that's why it's funny, though. I mean, well, I don't know if you know, but this actually came from Kubrick's idea, because this is the only comedy that he ever made. And it's not like an outright comedy, it's more like a satire, like a black comedy.
Yeah.
What he was going to do initially was he had read this book called Red Alert, which was like a serious Cold War thriller type of thing, where pretty much the same scenario that happens in Dr. Strangelove happens, but it's played straight. And he was going to do that. He was going to make like a scary like Cold War thriller, and he started writing the screenplay, like writing the adaptation, and he's like, I kept running into problems where it's like the absurdity of it just kept like hitting me in the face, and it's just like seemed like there was a lot of stuff that I had to take out to keep it from being funny. And then he was just like, well, why don't I just make it kind of funny? And just because like the absurdity of it, like just like I said, it kind of like whacks you upside the head.
I think what happens sometimes is, civilians, when they start finding out how military stuff actually works, like when I was up on the DMZ, during the early 90s, and it was Cold War stuff, and just the way we operated is a lot like it's following the same philosophies as what you see in this movie. It's very accurate in terms of the way the systems are and how they work. And I think when a civilian sees them, they realize kind of how mundane they are. Actually, it's just it's not foolproof. It's something kind of by the seat of the pants. Yeah, there's codes and stuff involved. There's a chain of command. There's fail-safes, but things can go wrong. It always does. No plan really survives contact with reality. And that's what this movie's about. It's like, yeah, it's 1960s Cold War. It's cutting-edge technology. But a lot of shit could go wrong.
Well, I think what it's satirizing in particular is the whole concept of mutually assured destruction, which was a whole thing at the time. That's what it's satirizing.
Yeah.
How like the ridiculousness of that concept. And the people that kind of advocated for it, some of the people that were really into it, like they couldn't even they opposed building, like, for example, fallout shelters, because they said no, it has to be like mutually assured destruction. That's the only way that we're gonna get everybody to like not do it. Is if nobody
there's no defense
if there's no defense against it, if nobody could survive it.
I guess you could say it is absurd, it's ridiculous, but it actually worked. If you kill me and I will kill you, that will keep you from trying to kill me. But what it is emphasizing is how dangerous it is. It's not that it's absurd, it's just very dangerous. And in the end, when you find out how it goes, they're still fighting over it at the very, very end. They're talking about the damn, what they call it? The mine shaft gap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can take the thinking to the extreme, and it's kind of ridiculous, but it is something that they would do. Yeah.
Well, like I said,
they're trying to win and survive.
Well, yeah, that's what he's satirizing. Yeah. He's just kind of satirizing the whole, just the end of the world, the whole like way that it could come about. Like you have to laugh because it's just like so.
Yeah.
It's so absurd that it could happen like that. Because the thing about it, like if you've never seen Dr. Strangelove, I kind of feel like it's one of those movies that either everybody's seen it or everybody is kind of like, kind of through cultural osmosis, like knows a lot about it. But, I mean, it posits this scenario where this one guy, like this one general...
He's a wing commander.
Yeah, with this one wing commander...
Jack Ripper.
Jack D. Ripper.
Yeah, Jack the Ripper.
Goes crazy and decides that he's going to launch a nuclear strike against the Russians, like I said, and kind of get... But the thing about it is that, without presidential authorization... But from what I've heard, that was actually something that they was something that they did. Yeah, well, so that was a real thing.
It probably wasn't called what they called it. They called it Attack Wing Plan R, which was in Plan R was if Washington D.C. had already been struck, and the chain of command was broken, a more junior commander could launch a retaliatory strike, which you would have to have that in the system. If it wasn't in the system, then the enemy would make a priority of a sneak attack against the fucking top and to avoid retaliation. This is the whole thing. It is kind of funny. It's the systems trying to retaliate against one another and planning the retaliation, and it can get quite extreme. And having lived through it and been in a Cold War era military service, because it was so extreme, I think it kept both sides in check because they weren't that fucking crazy. But in this movie, it was a dude that was crazy.
Yeah. See, that's what they're saying. And like when they explain, because there's a great scene where George C. Scott's character, Turgeson.
John Buck,
Turgeson.
Who was based on Kurt LeMay, who was a World War II hero/villain. He was Army Air Corps commander. He supervised the bombing campaigns of Japan. Fucking, had we lost that war, he would have been we would have been war criminals, okay, for the shit that he did. But LeMay was a tough dude, man, real sharp, and Bucky's kind of modeled after Kurt LeMay. So that's who they're talking about.
Yeah, everybody in this is sort of loosely based on a real person or a conglomeration of people, just exaggerated for comedic effect. But what I was going to say is that there's a scene where Buck Turgeson is explaining to the president, who's played by Peter Sellers in one of his 3 roles in this, that and the reason that they had for having this law where like a junior person could launch the codes without the president's approval, you're like, well, yeah, they probably would have that because they had a good reason for it. But you can kind of see how in a situation like this, where one dude just went like completely crazy about his precious bodily fluids and all this other kind of stuff and decided that he was going to launch a thing, and then they couldn't really take it back. So then like the whole like unfolding like insanity of the movie is them trying to like take it back and like bring back all the planes that are actually going to bomb Russia.
In defense of the system, they were able to recall them,
except for that one.
But there was one plane that had a damaged radio.
Yeah.
All right, and they couldn't recall it. And had something like that happened where they couldn't recall one and the Soviets knew what the hell went on, they probably just would have taken the blow. Because they would have just struck something like a ICBM site or something like that. Which the Soviets could take that damage and not retaliate. And then they'd get all kinds of money and shit from reparations for a nuclear accident, and they'd play that up for fucking 30, 40 years. The Soviets would love it. The Soviet Empire would play that up.
But see, that's why in the movie... But they didn't
know about the Doomsday device.
That's what I'm saying. That's why they had to put in the whole Doomsday device angle.
And Bucky's like, oh yeah, the Doomsday device. He thought it was
Where do we have one of those?
But he thought it was just some more fucking Soviet bullshit, It's
more of that commie propaganda.
Yeah, where they just said, well, we can't afford all this fucking high-tech shit, so we're just going to bury these bombs in the ground and lace them with, what would they call it, some cobalt thorium D or some shit,
like that,
which has a real fucking long radioactive half-life, and it would just poison the earth and just destroy everyone on the earth if you ever fucking touched it. So
no one person was in control of it. It would just do it automatically, and you couldn't turn it off. So they almost kind of had. So it was like this escalating absurdity of, yes, they were able to recall most of the planes except for that one whose radio was broken, and they couldn't get the code to like
Dr.
come back.
Strangelove is in there. He's hiding he's in the war fucking room. Okay. And he's modeled after Werner Von Brown.
Among other people, but mostly Werner Von Brown.
Werner Von Brown is with the whole fucking wounded arm. When he was first fucking surrendered, he had the fucking broken arm, and he's smiling with his fucking cigarette. Fucking, I got some Werner Von Brown stories, too. Fucking, friend of my dad's fucking was his military guard in Mississippi at the secret rocket base down in fucking Gulfport, Mississippi. Told me all about, when I was working on his air conditioner, told me all about Werner Von Brown. What an asshole he was, okay? Fucking, his guards were his servants. He'd fucking order them because he was so important, you know. And then later on, he ran NASA. But Dr. Strangelove jumps forward and he goes, well, wait a minute, you have this doomsday device. What good is it if you don't tell anybody that you have it? You know, he figured that out real quickly. Well, we were going to announce it at the upcoming fucking party.
Because you know how much he likes surprises.
Yeah, because it's going to be a surprise. And there's like, oh, shit, you know. So then they end up, they realize the doomsday fucking device is going to go off. So then they start planning the fucking ultimate fucking thing, which is to take a fucking nucleus of humanity and to go down into these damn mine shafts. And of course, it's going to be, you know, the best people, you know, selected by a computer. And in order to fucking repopulate the Earth after that 90 years has passed, you're going to need a lot of females. So the ratio is going to be 10 females to every 1 male.
At which case, every dude in this is like, ooh, that's a
yeah,
good idea.
yeah.
I like this
okay,
idea.
all right. And they're going, and of course, these women are going to have to be selected for certain fucking attributes that'll make a man want to just fucking get them all pregnant, basically, is what they're saying. Because that's a heavy fucking dude, you know, it's a heavy fucking load on a man, you know. So they're going to have to be very stimulating in nature. So they're all going, yeah. So even the Russian guy, even the communist guy,
they're like, oh, okay.
who's
liking
going, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah, we're gonna go down in there. So then they start already thinking about, well, wait a minute, what are they doing in their bunkers? So they're already planning for the next fucking retaliatory. So it's really, they're kind of just, it's like a satire on the damn stranglehold the U.S. Empire, the Soviet Empire had around each other during the fucking Cold War. They kept each other in check, but it was dangerous.
I think a lot of people too, like you kind of, I mean, the satire of the Cold War and everything like that, and you know, Werner Von Brown being the model for Dr. Strangelove and everything like that. That's all like pretty obvious if you know like about the politics of the time period and like what was going on at that time period. But I feel like a lot of people, less people get the whole sexual undercurrent where everything is just kind of like phallic.
Yeah, well,
and everything is like sexual frustration. Like everything is couched in language of like sexual frustration or like in sexual terms, you know what I mean?
It was 1960s and these alpha level fucking military industrial complex type dudes back in the 60s were known for being married and have multiple fucking secretaries that were girlfriends and shit, and fucking that was their lifestyle. They had it made. There was a lot of testosterone going on in that era, because they had just basically they were the ruling class of the winning empire that had made it through World War II, and when the government, the military, and corporations had merged into one thing. Some people might call that fascism, okay, but once it had merged into one thing, the military, industrial, political complex, they ruled the world, at least in their hemispheres. So they could do whatever they wanted. They had all the money, all the fucking power, the women, you know, and not just Americans. Werner Von Brown had a shit ton of girlfriends. Women loved him. He was a good-looking guy. He was ex-Nazi and an ardent Nazi. But he was working on the American side and then ended up running NASA. Did the whole fucking moonshot stuff and everything. And so, yeah, it's just the way culture was back then.
Yeah, but like I was saying, that's another thing that the movie is satirizing. It's kind of satirizing the whole. I mean, particularly, I think the most egregious example of that is Slim Pickens at the end, like riding the bomb, down on the thing. But also when you had
like a bull though too.
When you had like Jack D. Ripper, like with that big huge gun that he had like in the golf bag, and he's holding it like that, and he's like telling the other guy to hold it with him, like help him hold it, and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like he was very aware, and I think it's funny because Stanley Kubrick said like later on that somebody had written him a fan letter and said about like all the sexual stuff in there, and he's like, oh, I'm glad somebody picked up on that, because it's like there's a bunch of stuff that he put in there. Like there's lots of shots of like Jack D. Ripper with that big cigar like popping out his mouth, and him talking about his bodily fluids, and he's denying women his essence and all this other
but he's
kind
not
of
avoiding women, he's just denying them his essence. Yeah, he kind of there's a lot of good shit in it. Peter Sellers plays like four or five roles.
He's three characters. He was actually supposed to play 4 characters. He was supposed to play the Slim Pickens character too.
I don't know. Slim Pickens is fucking.
But what ended up happening?
Combat with the Rooskies.
Yeah. What ended up happening with that was that there was a bunch of things. He was just kind of like, well, he was afraid that he wasn't going to get the accent right.
Yeah.
Like, he practiced, and he's like, I just feel like it wasn't good enough.
No.
And so he didn't really want to do it. And he's like, look, I'm already playing 3 parts, and he was getting kind of worn out. But then it ended up like he hurt his ankle, or he broke his ankle, and he couldn't like get into the set, like the B-52 set. And so they were like, okay, so they got Slim Pickens instead, which actually is like really, really great because Slim Pickens is fucking hilarious in this. Another thing that I heard too is that they didn't tell Slim Pickens that this was a comedy, and they just let him play it straight. So that's just him. Yeah, well, you see, we haven't got onto this subject yet. The bomber crew is awesome. All right. The bomber crew is supposed to represent like the pinnacle of American technology and bravery. These are the best that America has inside a fucking B-52 with their best atomic weaponry and their best fucking secured radios and their best training, and these guys are going up insurmountable odds. They even go toe-to-toe with a nuclear tipped anti-aircraft missile that they survived that. The entire Soviet Air Force is bearing down on them to try to stop them from delivering this bomb, and they make it through and drop the bomb. Fucking just like heroes and shit. Yeah. Fucking Slim Pickens actually goes down into the bomb bay to fucking rig the doors to make sure that they open, because they wouldn't open. Gets on top of the bomb, and when they drop it, he rides it down to the target. Yeah! And it's just like the pinnacle of American alphaness. Okay? They're doing what they're told to do, and unbeknownst to them, the whole mission was scrapped. It was a fucking... It never should have been ordered. The president was trying to help the Soviets hunt the plane down to stop it because they didn't know about the doomsday device. They didn't know that General Ripper fucking illegally fucking issued the attack plan R, you know? They didn't know. They just did what they were told to do. Yeah, because he just did it. And really, the only reason that it was found out was because another character that's played by Peter Sellers, who was like the British RAF guy, he's like, oh, all this stuff is going on, but then like he had a radio. Like, even though Jack the Ripper told everybody to, turn in all their radios, but he's happened to find one, and he turned it on, and it was just like regular civilian radio programming. He's like, well, this wouldn't happen if the Soviets had attacked us, so what the fuck? And so he gets like locked in the office with Jack the Ripper, and then as he figures out what's going on, he's trying to like get the code out of him so that he can stop the planes. Yeah, he's Royal Air Force. He's like an exchange officer on an exchange program. He's Ripper's fucking executive officer. He figures out that the fucking there was no the attack never happened. That Ripper's gone rogue. So there shouldn't have been a launch. There shouldn't have been the Soviet attack never happened. So there shouldn't have been any launch codes given. You know, so he tries to get the damn recall codes out of him, but it's just turns out fucking well, the recall code was POE or EOP, OPE, something like that. Purity of essence and peace on earth, and. What's his name? Mandrake. He's British as hell. Motherfucker's name was Mandrake. All right. Mandrake gets him to eventually tell him how it dawned on him that what was it that where he came up with this purity of essence thing, and how he came to the conclusion to launch, and he said it came to him while he was having sex. Yeah. Basically, what he said was he felt depleted afterwards. Yeah. And that it had to do with that the Soviets had fluoridated the water in order to drain our precious bodily fluids. Your precious bodily fluids. So I'm taking it based on what he said is that he had erectile dysfunction. Yeah. And he thought it was the Soviets putting fluoride in the water. Yeah, essentially, that's what it's saying. Yeah. Like so I said, it's almost kind of like this whole movie is kind of like a series of dick jokes. Yeah, you have much. So, in order to deny the enemy of victory over him, he would avoid women. Yeah.
Okay. But then he denied this. Well, I'm not really avoiding them. I'm just denying them my essence.
Yeah.
And the Mandrake's like, I see.
Yeah. Like,
I guess.
oh, shit.
So it was kind of veiled language, but that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't get it up.
He blamed
the Russians. And decided he was going to, like, nuke
strike the Russians for fluoridating
and pretty
the water.
much destroy the whole world because he couldn't get his dick
So
ready.
some Viagra could have fucking prevented all that.
I mean, the thing about it, like I said, I forgot how fucking funny this movie is. There's so many fucking iconic scenes. Some of my favorite scenes are Mandrake and Ripper in the office, like the
Sellers
conversation.
is knocking it out of the park on this.
He's so fucking good in this. I mean, just like he's amazing. He's great as the president. That whole extended sequence with the president, whose name is Merkin Muffley.
Yeah.
You know, a Merkin is like a thing that you put over your pubic hair.
Yeah.
Is what that is.
Yeah, and then he's talking to the the premier, the Soviet premier.
Yeah, and
over the phone.
And the premier is obviously like drunk and probably like with a hooker, but it's like the way that they're talking to one another, it almost sounds like one of those old like Bob Newhart phone routines.
Well, they're kiss asses.
Yeah, and it's like the funniest thing is just the way that he's talking to the guy.
I'm upset. Are you upset? And we can both be upset together.
It's good that we're both fine.
Yeah. Which that's Kubrick fucking making the statement that there are no real heroes in this. These dudes are all kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? That none of these systems can really save you. So the politicians are just a bunch of kiss asses. Fucking the what do you call it? The Soviet diplomat. His name is Kissoff.
Yeah.
And he denied all kinds of shit, pretended to be a good guy, but he was taking pictures of the little board.
The big board.
The big board, yeah.
You can't let them in here. They'll see the big board.
But it's kind of left vague because Bucky grabs him and goes, look, he was trying to take it. And he goes, he tried to plant that on me.
Which he may have.
Which he may have, but the president believed it. But then later on, dude Kissoff did have. He had another little camera that was taking pictures of the big board. After the shit, so
even after it was too late to like do any good.
They're all a bunch of rats, you know what I mean? Fucking all of them. Just funny, you know.
I mean, everything in this is hilarious, but like the scenes. I think the scenes of the president like talking to the premier like on the phone, because there are like extended phone conversations. You can't hear the Russian premier, but you can tell kind of what's being said by just what Peter Sellers is saying, and it's just like. The way that he talks to him is like fucking hilarious. Like the way that he's trying to like broach the fact that someone accidentally, you know how we had those discussions about what would happen, like if something happened with the bomb, the hydrogen bomb. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, someone went and did a silly thing. You know what I mean? It was like that kind of shit.
And what I really liked though is they showed the bomber crew fucking. They're actually shown as sympathetic. They're fucking super well trained, doing their job. Fucking, they're gonna drop this bomb, hell or high water.
Well, they think that's what their mission is.
That's their mission, and they're really the only competent motherfuckers out of this whole system, and they're being abused in a way because the mission was false.
And they had no way of knowing that.
They had no way of knowing.
Because they even checked. They were like, are we sure that that's what, because that's like pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
And they called and checked and everything. Like they did everything they were supposed to do.
So the professionals on the front lines are really the only sympathetic guys out of the whole fucking deal. And the dudes that were fighting their way in, they had some really good gunfight scenes. They're done in black and white. It looks like real combat footage with the airborne unit, the Army airborne unit, trying to fight the Air Force security to get into the base to fucking arrest a Ripper and try to get the fucking recall codes. That was great scenes. It looked real. You even see bullet impacts. The squib rounds, way they had them set up, beautiful. The only problem I saw in that scene is that a dude jumps up with a submachine gun, a beautiful shot of him unloading into a top story of a window. It looked real as fuck. But the machine gun is an MP40. That's German, World War II. Everybody else had...
Yeah, a lot of people have pointed that out.
Yeah, that's a German gun.
But they're not sure if that was... Well, they're not sure. I've seen different theories. It's like, Kubrick did that on purpose for whatever reason, or just because they got that one because they thought it looked enough like another one or something that.
It looks like an M3 grease gun.
Yeah.
But the other guys had M3s.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't have enough to go around, so they were like, it's close enough. Although usually I kind of feel like Kubrick, although this was one of his earlier films, but he's like kind of a known perfectionist.
They showed some other dudes in M3s, and they were just perfect shots with M3s and 303 M1919 belt-fed machine guns, 30-06 machine guns, and they're just lighting up the fucking army as they're coming across the open field, and it looks real. The bullet impacts look real and everything. Shaky cam, first time I'd ever seen that in an old movie. Like it was done from
it's like a documentary,
a news report or a documentary, like combat footage.
It's supposed to look like
it looked really good.
I mean, like I said, Kubrick like really, because it's kind of contrasts that with like the really, really beautiful, like especially the shots of the war room, which I think are like really great, and like the lighting in this, which is like really kind of very, very like chiaroscuro. It's very like kind of harsh, like light and dark, like looks really good. But and another one of the funniest scenes too is when when he meets Keenan Wynn, like as what was Colonel Batguano or whatever his name was, and he comes and calls him a prevert.
You prevert.
And and he's like, and you know, like poor Mandrake is trying to like call the president on a fucking payphone to tell him what the codes are to recall the planes, and he doesn't have enough change. Yeah. And he's like asking fucking Guano for change, and he's like, "Do you think I care? Like go into combat with my pockets full of change?" And
shit? Which you don't.
And then and then like he's saying, it's like, "Well, go shoot that Coke machine," and it's like, you know, that's what the bullets are for, you twit, or something like that. And then he's like, "Well, you know, if all of this shakes out, you're gonna have to answer to the Coca-Cola company, like for blowing up the fucking, for shooting the fucking Coke machine to get change out." There
was something kind of struck me as true, even though that guy was a colonel.
I think he was a colonel.
Yeah, he was a full bird colonel, and he was awful dumb for a full bird colonel.
It's a comedy.
It's a comedy. But here's the thing, when he showed up, he didn't know why they wanted Ripper. He didn't know anything about the launch of the damn, which that kind of rings true. But I would think that a guy as high as colonel would know the situation. Maybe they wouldn't have told him, but the guy, in reality, the actual guys fighting to get inside the Air Force Base wouldn't have really known why. It would just be, get in there, penetrate the security, arrest the commander, get him on the phone. And that's probably all they would have known. They wouldn't have known that he'd launched. But I would think that they would have told somebody as high as the full bird colonel of why. But I don't know. Because he didn't know about the launch, which I thought that was kind of strange.
Well, like I said, one, it's a comedy, and they were, you know, if he did that on purpose, he's probably like trying to make a point about it. It's like, oh, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no time.
Or the whole situation was so chaotic that they wouldn't have like told him anything, because they were like running around like they're chickens with their heads cut off.
They were there, and they got there an hour later? Not even an hour.
So, I don't remember what the time.
So it was thrown together quickly, and that's true. That's how that would go. The average person wouldn't know why. They would just get real basic orders, and it would be a clusterfuck. All right.
Well, yeah, because when the whole thing, like when they first come in, like to the discussion and say, "Hey, we launched a thing," and they tell the president, what is like George C. Scott says something like 25 minutes, like they'll like the planes will be appearing like in Russian airspace or whatever the fuck. So yeah, it was like a really, really short time because they didn't know, because like I said, it was one guy that went rogue and nobody knew that he had done it until it was almost like too late to stop
it. In the bomber crew, if you pay attention closely, there's a young James Earl Jones, all right, Army Ranger from Mississippi, and Darth Vader, okay, and he's looking great, does a great fucking job on the bomber crew, has a bunch of lines, and then what about Commander Kong? After they fucking dropped him out and everything, it was just a good flick, man.
It really is. I mean, it's a fucking classic. And like I said, I forgot how fucking funny it was. Particularly, I think the phone call scenes are my favorite. Like I said, with the president and the brush, I was just like laughing my ass off. But that whole scene, like with the phone booth and the pay phone and like Guano and all that was like fucking hysterical. Because that's another thing that's like super absurd. It's like, how absurd would it be? And it's like all of the phone communications have been cut off. All that works is a payphone. You know, you have to like call and save the world, and you don't have enough change, and like the operator's giving you aggro about it, like won't just like let you slide. And it's like, then you have to like blow open a fucking Coke machine to get the money, and the dude's like all like, he doesn't want to do it because it's like, oh, you're gonna answer the Coca-Cola company. It's just like that's fucking hilarious to me. Like that kind of stuff is hilarious. And honestly, I kind of feel like most people think that's hilarious because this movie is generally regarded as one of the best comedies of all time. Roger Ebert called it like probably the funniest like political satire of all time, which it's definitely up there. I have to say, I just looked on, because somebody said something, I was watching a review of it, and they said the Criterion Collection version of it is so cool. You go and look at it, and it has, like, the cover of it's cool and everything like that, but it comes with the whole little package. All of the extras, like all the essays and stuff that people have written about the movie, they come in little packets. You know, the packets are like Wing Plan R or whatever the hell, like the little envelopes.
Yeah.
They all come in like little envelopes like that. And it comes with the little miniature Bible / Russian phrase book.
Did it come with the nylons?
I don't know, because that was like the whole
pills,
the survival
pills, stress pills. Yeah.
One whatever prophylactic, 2 pairs of nylons,
one
lipstick. Woo, you could have a real fun time in Vegas with that. You know what, the original line was actually you could have a fun time in Dallas with that, but they changed it because of the Kennedy assassination.
Okay,
because this came out only in 1964.
That shit wasn't as ridiculous as you think. Things like lipsticks and nylons would have been very valuable in the Soviet Union. So maybe they might have included something like that in a survival packet, because a down pilot might be able to trade those for something.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, I think the best comedy, and the reason why a lot of people like this satire, the best satire, it's funnier like the closer to the truth it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have to take something that's true and like point out the absurdity of it too. Yeah,
it is funny. It is a comedy, but it's also very authentic and educational. That was pretty much the way that system worked.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been funny if it wasn't based in truth.
And like I said, you know, the book that Kubrick was initially adapting wasn't funny. Like, it was a serious, it wasn't like, it was a thriller, but it was based on real shit. And he was just like, the absurdity of it just like struck me, and I decided to make it a black comedy. But it's based in reality, though. That's what makes it funny.
It was called Wing Attack Plan R.
Yeah.
Wing Attack Plan R.
So so the Criterion Collection, I don't know how much it costs, but I was like looking at it going, oh man, that's so cool. Like, I love that the little Bible Russian phrase book thing, and like all the essays being in those little envelopes with R on it and stuff. I was like, that's so fucking awesome. I just love that. But can we also, I don't think we've even hardly talked about George C. Scott, who, I mean, Peter Sellers is amazing in this, like in his 3 roles. But George C. Scott, he fucking kills it in this.
Knocks it out of the park.
And here's another funny thing. This is, and I don't know if this is true, but this is like one of the classic stories that's told about this movie. So George C. Scott gets brought in to do it, and he was initially supposed to play it like more straight, or like more like George C. Scott's type of character. What Kubrick did, though, Kubrick wanted him to go more broad and more comedic. So what he would do is he would say, well, just for practice, why don't you do the same scene, but like do it kind of over the top and funny. I'm not going to film it, though. I'm not going to film it. It's just a practice. But then he did film it, and those are the takes that he used. And apparently George C. Scott was really, really mad when he saw like the final film, because he's like, I didn't think that he was filming those takes. Those were like the over-the-top comedic takes, and I kind of did a lot of it straight. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that from like a lot of people, because he actually didn't want to, he still liked Kubrick, but he didn't want to work with him again after, because he thought that was like fucked up that he did that. But I have to say that like his whole over the top thing in this movie is so funny. Like that one scene where he just like keeps popping gum in his mouth and like fucking chewing all the gum and shit. Oh my god, he's like so funny.
Okay, so who was correct? The president or Bucky? Who called it, really? Well, they both failed. Both of their plans failed because they didn't know about the doomsday device. But had the doomsday device not been there, it would have been safer to go with Bucky's plan, which was what Ripper wanted. Ripper launched because he said, okay, guys, I commenced the launch. You got no choice now. You guys are going to have to fully commit. If not, you won't survive the retaliation. The president's plan of trying to recall the planes, in reality, with the amount of time that they had, would have been a fucking very risky. Chances are you wouldn't have recalled them all, and then you still would have suffered a fucking massive retaliation. More Americans would have died.
I mean, in the context of the movie, it would have worked if that one plane hadn't had their radio broken.
But the thing is that it was only a movie. In reality, the amount of time that they had, they wouldn't have had time. Plans never survive fucking contact with reality. You want to go with the dumbest, most caveman plan. Those tend to work. They're faster, easier, and more effective. I would have gone with Bucky's fucking decision, just full in. Just hit the Soviets as hard as they could to minimize the retaliation, because you're having to you're choosing between 20 million American dead and like 120 million American dead. You want to go for 20 million American dead, not 120 million. That would be the way to go. That would be much easier and faster and more assured than recalling them. Recalling them you wouldn't have been able to recall them, and the Soviets would have fucking retaliated anyway. Remember, they only had 20 minutes.
Well, now see, I don't know about
chances of...
I don't know about 20 minutes. I'm just saying that when George C. Scott's character first comes in, it says 25 minutes. Like, but I'm assuming
until they were picked up by radar.
Until they were picked up by radar. Yeah.
But here's the deal: you had to get the recall codes. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, they had already been talking to the premier, so they knew that it was a mistake. But they were just trying to like figure out.
I don't think it would have mattered.
No, I'm just saying that in the context of the movie, they were they already knew that it was a mistake. So
the Soviets would have launched, even if it was a mistake. And then because they're a machine too, they're just going to have their response is going to go. Everything was preset. It was like a damn mutual destruction machine. So Bucky was actually right. I just hit him with everything and just fucking hope for the best, because recalling them wouldn't have worked, because you never would have got those recall codes. The whole idea of some British guy going, oh, well, he wrote them down, it must be this. That putting that many lives on such a damn coincidence, nah. In reality, there would have been no way to get the recall codes, because Ripper wouldn't have written them down. He wouldn't have repeated them in a real situation. It's just that it was a movie. There had to be a way to get the recall codes. So that's how they did it. But it didn't matter. There was the Doomsday device. So it was the same.
Apparently, too, this movie was supposed to end with a big pie fight in the war room. And there's still photographs of it. They did shoot it.
Well, there was a buffet there, so they were fighting over that.
They said you could see that. So it was supposed to end in a pie fight, but then they decided not to do that. The one scene that's great with George C. Scott, where he's just like talking and then like trips and falls and then like gets up. That was apparently an accident, and Stanley Kubrick thought it was hysterical, so he left it in. Yeah, because he didn't break character.
Yeah.
Because he didn't break character.
Look at the big board.
So they just left it in there. Because when we were watching, I said, that did not look like he did that on purpose. Like, I'm sure that wasn't scripted.
It was real spontaneous.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the stuff, and Kubrick didn't usually do this, because he was, like I said, he was kind of a perfectionist. This was like an earlier film, but he did actually let, like, some, particularly Peter Sellers, like, ad-libbed a lot of stuff, particularly, like, with the phone conversations and everything, and Kubrick liked it so much that he just like left it in there and then just wrote it into the script later on, because he just liked all the improv.
Then another thing that was funny about the buffet is the Soviet diplomat. He was a diplomat, wasn't he? I think he was a diplomat. Kiss off.
Yeah, I think yeah.
He looks at the buffet and he's got Americans serving him. He's supposed to be like some Soviet communist socialist type dudes, and he's looking around and goes, no, I would never have a Jamaican cigar made by capitalist stooges and shit, you know what I mean? But none of this food is up to snuff for him, you know. None of it's good enough for him. He just ends up having poached eggs. Even though it was all real super fine food, but it wasn't good enough for him. Fucking funny, you know. Supposed to be a socialist, but he's got these fucking fine tastes. He's turning his nose up on shit.
Well, like I said, everybody gets skewered in this. And it's like, everybody is kind of like...
Everybody's a fucking clown.
Everybody is kind of like based on sort of like a real person. Or not exactly, but it's just kind of like... Because like I said, the Dr. Strangelove character is mostly based on Werner Von Brown, but he was based on like Edward Teller, like some other people too. Like that they kind of like put in one conglomeration. And the whole thing about his one hand with like the black glove on it and everything, that was taken from Metropolis, that Fritz Lang movie.
His hair is, he's got...
The hair is taken from that, too.
Von Brown had hair like that, though, too.
I know, but I'm just saying that I think the look was kind of like from Metropolis, mainly. But, yeah, it is kind of looking like him, too. And the accent... They said the accent was actually not what Werner Von Brown really sounded like. The accent was actually an Austrian guy that worked on The Crew with Kubrick.
Okay.
And so
he just did that.
So Sellers just did that voice as that, which I think is great because it's funny because watching the movie now because. I watch Mystery Science Theater a lot, and they reference Dr. Strangelove a lot. Like, they are always, like, peppering, like, lines from this. And particularly, like, Servo loves to do that. Mein Führer, I can walk, you know what I mean? Like, at the end. Which some people are kind of like, well, what did that mean? Because I saw, like, a couple reviews, and they were like, there's a couple of different theories.
I understood it.
I thought, well, there's a couple different...
He's regained his purpose.
Yeah, well, it's so much that if you're going with a sexual reading, it's just like when he's thinking about, oh, the world is ending and they're going down in the mine shafts with all the women and everything, that it gave him a full body erection. I've seen that one, which, like I said, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, I kind of think too that he got so excited about the destruction of the world that he stood up, and he wasn't supposed to be standing up because he could walk the whole time. So he tried to play it off like it was some big miracle. That's what I thought.
That's not how I interpreted it. I interpreted it as, it was now a brave new world. Okay, that they were going to go into underneath the surface of the earth, and once again his Nazi skills were being needed. He can now walk. He's back, because the mine shaft gap. It's a new war. That's
kind of like what I said about like it gave him a full body erection, kind of.
Oh, well, I guess.
Like, yeah, that's the same kind of thing.
Okay. That's an erection. I just saw.
Well, no, but I'm just saying that it's like I'm just saying it's like metaphorical.
He's now coming back to life.
A metaphorical.
Because they'd grown kind of powerful and comfortable in the old ways of the that challenge had been met. That one's done. That mission's done. It's a new mission now. They're going to go down into the mine shafts with these girls and worry about the mine shaft gap and how to repopulate the earth once and the cycle begins again. That's how I interpreted it.
You know what's great about this movie, though, is that I was interested to watch. I wanted to watch some reviews and analysis of this movie by really young people, like people in their 20s or 30s who were not even like a twinkle in anyone's eye, like when all of this stuff was going on. And interestingly, a lot of the reviews and analyses that I saw that were actually like really, really good and like really pointed, and a lot of people that really love this movie were like young, were like in their 20s and 30s. So even though, yeah, it helps if you know about the Cold War and you know about kind of like the politics of the time and everything like that, like it's funnier if you know the context. Yeah. But the fact that people that weren't even alive back then and maybe just learned about it at school or whatever, like still think it's funny, and that's a real testament to like its staying power.
Yeah, well, part of that is that the philosophy of mutual destruction is not just the Cold War.
That's what I'm saying.
Everything. Yeah, that applies to what's going on now.
So it's kind of like it's not. Yeah, it's of its time, but it could be extrapolated to the modern era as well.
Right. They're showing the 1960s application of Soviet Union versus the American Empire. That same philosophy is being applied in other ways today. It's just part of what governments and think tanks and fucking intelligence agencies and what the military industrial complexes of all the empires do. This is how they are. This is how they think. It's a systematic mode of thinking. It's just they camouflage it. They've camouflaged it now in different descriptions and words, and they dress it up to not look military and to not look threatening, to make it sound. They motherfuckers aren't wearing uniforms now. They'll just wear V-neck sweaters and shit and fucking have soft hairdos and fucking use different wordings and shit and try to make everybody feel comfortable. But it's that same thinking. They've just camouflaged it.
But yeah, so I'm just saying it's interesting that that a lot of younger people are still into this movie, so it still absolutely does hold up. And like I said, I still think it's not my favorite movie of Kubrick's, but it's definitely up there. And I was really glad that I got to watch it again because it's funny as hell, and I just laughed my fucking ass off at it. But yeah, it's actually on Tubi for free at the moment if you want to watch it. So holy shit, you don't even have to pay anything to watch it. I don't even know if it's on any other streaming services at the moment, but I just found it on Tubi last night and I was excited because I wanted to see it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like most of the people that be watching this video have already seen it, but if you haven't, let us know what you think about it. Like, why haven't you seen it? Or if you have seen it, did you like it? Did you think it was funny or what? So yeah, let us know in the comments, and we will see you guys again on the next movie retrospective. See you later.